Okay, so we want to make it so that these buttons do something. Let's open up the inspector with a right click and click on Inspect Element. Now, when I click on the Twitter button, we can see we get this error that says the login is not defined. So let's go back into our HTML, and we can see we call this login function and pass it either Twitter or Facebook. Let's scroll down to our script tags and we'll define what this function actually does. Because there's two options, Twitter or Facebook, we will name a new variable in this function and I'll call it provider. Let's quickly just console log and make sure that this function is being called when we expect it to and that the provider does get passed in with what we expect it to be. So we can save this, restart the server, and refresh. So when we click on the Twitter button, it says login with Twitter, and when we click on Facebook, it's login with Facebook. So we know that everything's linked up properly. Once more, the provider right here is that's a variable that's getting passed in up here, Twitter or Facebook. So now let's actually create an authentication. So we'll go to the docs on Firebase and we'll scroll down to the Twitter one. And here we can see there's a ref and then we do something with that ref. We only need the second part of this because we've already defined this ref as my data ref up here. All right, so I'll just clean this up really quick. Perfect. So now we can save, restart the server, and refresh. When I click on the Twitter button, I get this error, and that's because we haven't set up our auth for Twitter yet. To set up the Twitter auth, the first thing we need to do is go to Twitter Dev and click on the Twitter apps. So we'll create a new app and just fill in this form. For the website, I just grabbed my Firebase website. And for the callback, that's in the Firebase auth documents. And in place of your Firebase app, put in the name of your app, which for me was UIT Chat. Scroll down and agree and create your Twitter application. Now in the keys and access tokens, we can just grab this API key and there's the API secret. So we'll take this. And back in your Firebase, go to Login and Auth, the Twitter tab, and paste the API key. Go back and get the API secret and enable for Twitter authentication. So now if we refresh, when we click on Twitter, we get this pop-up, which lets us sign in. And down in our console, we can see that it authenticated successfully. So that's awesome. Awesome. Now that we have Twitter working, let's do the same thing for Facebook. We'll go to Facebook Dev. You may need to create an account, but once you're in, we'll go to My Apps and add a new app. We'll choose Website, and we'll create an app ID. We'll give it a name and choose Communication as our category. We'll need to prove we're human. Then we'll get to this page. We'll go to Settings, and in Advanced, we can scroll down to this Valid OAuth Redirect. So just like in the Firebase apps for Twitter, we'll do the same thing for Facebook. So let's grab this callback, and we'll change your Firebase app to be UIT Chat. And we can save these changes. And then back in the basics, we have our app ID and our app secret here. So in our Firebase database, we can go to the Login Facebook tab and just copy and paste these here. It automatically saves. And finally, back in the docs, we'll just grab this code here like we did for Twitter and paste it right underneath our Twitter one. We'll change ref to my data ref. And I didn't quite close this properly, so I'm going to fix that right now. Perfect. Okay, so before we test this, let's take a look at this code. The code to check if it's Twitter or Facebook is almost identical. So we could leave it like this and just create if statements. If Twitter, then run this code. Or if Facebook, then run this code. But it's really silly to duplicate our code like this. Instead of saying Twitter or Facebook, it makes more sense to use the provider variable that we've created earlier. And then we can just delete this excess code here. And we can clean this up. Awesome. So that does the exact same thing, but with less code. So now if we save, restart the server, and refresh, when we click on the Facebook button, we should get, oops, okay, so I made an error, and let's just go back to the Firebase login and auth to Facebook. See, I didn't click this enable Facebook authentication. So let's do that and refresh here. Now, if I test this, perfect, I get this box that I can agree to. And now I've authenticated successfully, so that's awesome. I can close this and now type. So things look good. There's still some things that I really want to do to tidy this up a bit. First of all, if I've already logged in, I don't want this box to show up. I only want to show up if I haven't logged in. So this shouldn't have come up this time since we just logged in with Facebook. Also, I want the pop-up box to close automatically. I shouldn't have to manually do that. And finally, I would like to save some data to the Firebase database. So let's do that now.